With the release of Destiny Soldiers in the TCG, two older archetypes received significant support boosts, Dark Lord and Destiny Heroes. But interestingly enough, the new archetype, Abyss Actors, was largely ignored. It is unfortunate that Abyss Actors have been passed over, but not surprising. The problem with Abyss Actors is mostly in appearance. The archetype does not have some cool, new, sexy mechanic or engine, nor did it have meaningful hype born from the OCG or the anime. When moving past the lack of sexiness of the deck, one can see a deck that has some nice tricks up its sleeve to compete with the meta. So, what does my Abyss Actor deck look like? Evil Heal is the big hitter of the group, but outside of the attack power, it's rather limited. Its Pendulum effect is alright, but targeted attack reduction requiring a tribute is not really good, even in a Pendulum build. Also, the 1 scale is not really valuable at the moment, seeing that Abyss Actors have only one level 2 monster, and it is not even in the TCG yet, nor really is a staple or 3 copy monster to begin with. The monster effect is really only accessible via Pendulum summon, because normal summoning this monster is definitely not worth that effect. However, when Pendulum summoned, this card can be rather useful, commonly dropping an opponent's monster's attack by at least 2,000, and commonly netting a script card from the graveyard. The problem is Pendulum summoning it in the first place, for it requires Wild Hope in one of the zones and an Abyss Actor in the other. Overall, multiple copies are too inefficient, but one copy can have its uses. However, I don't like running it. Superstar is one of the best monsters as a level 7 2500 attacker with a great Pendulum effect, attributing 1 actor for the graveyard bound script. 99% of the time, that script will be Rise of the Dark Ruler. It can really ruin your opponent's day, commonly double dipping its destruction effect. The monster effect is even better, getting the script straight from the deck, and with it being a normal spell, it can be activated on the same turn as its acquisition. One key strategy for actors is to get 2 superstars on the field, 1 in the Pendulum zone and 1 actually in the monster zone, and continue to recycle Rise of the Dark Rulers every turn, consistently allowing the actor player to destroy 1 to 4 face-up cards on the opponent's field per turn. And with Superstar being a level 7 monster, the opponent cannot respond to the activation of Rise. 3 copies. Sassy Rookie is another solid card. Its Pendulum effect is alright, being able to trade an actor destruction for itself, but right now there's little advantage to this effect because as Pendulum monsters in the Pendulum zone, staving off destruction of Pendulum monsters in the monster zone is not routinely valuable, but it can come in handy from time to time, most notably warding off mass destruction like Raigeki. Its monster effect is fantastic. Not only does it provide field control with inherent anti-destruction once per turn, but it floats, allowing the summons of another level 4 or lower actor monster that is not rookie when it's destroyed by an opponent or the monster field. 3 copies are basically mandatory in my opinion. Wild Hope is another fantastic card for this deck, with its critically important Pendulum effect. Upping the other scale to 9 allows huge flexibility in what monster represents that scale, and allows the Pendulum summons of Heal, making it actually worth running, even though I don't. This card should be run at 3 just for the Pendulum effect. The attack increase is somewhat immaterial in its usefulness, but it does net a search when it's destroyed by the opponent. 3 copies always. Leading Lady is also a nice solid card with useful effects, both in the Pendulum and Monster Zone. Its Pendulum effect is nice for recovery purposes, nabbing an extra from the extra deck, almost always when the opponent deals damage thanks to extra having such low attack. Take a direct attack and grab a Rookie or Hope and help change the duel around. If your other scale is set or it's really early in the duel, you can simply reduce the opponent's attack, heavily limiting the attacking capacity of that monster in the future and making it easier to kill during your next turn. Its monster effect is also nice. When one of your monsters deals damage, you can lower the attack of another opponent's monster, making that monster easier to kill. Finally, when Lady is destroyed by an opponent, you get a script search to the field, which will again frequently be Rise of the Dark Ruler. So basically, when the opponent destroys Lady, they are, in a sense, almost setting up their own destruction during your next turn. 3 copies. While not out yet in the TCG, I feel it is important to discuss Dandy supporting actor. Dandy is one of those cards that right now is unable to meet its potential, but in the future, if more certain types of monster support comes out, it could be great. Its Pendulum effect is more of a security blanket of sorts. For the only 2 cards that can currently be acquired are Heal and Extra. Neither of these cards are that useful with Pendulum monsters already in the zone. As discussed previously, Heal is bad in the Pendulum zone in general, and unless Wild Hope is in the other Pendulum zone, Heal is unsummonable via the Pendulum mechanic. Extra is better, but only functions in a sense of acting as a future security blanket that can be used if the scale is broken. However, depending on the pace of the duel, the usefulness of Extra will go from meaningful to just an extra card in hand for potential discarding purposes. Being a natural scale 8 certainly helps, allowing the summons of a non-Abyss Actor monster due to not having to depend on Wild Hope's Pendulum level changing effect. Its monster effect is basically meaningless with regards to Extra because it has no worthwhile effect when 2 cards already exist in the Pendulum zone. Fortunately, the effect works very well with Heal. Unfortunately, he is a level 2, demanding that Heal be in the Pendulum zone, meaning that you have to run multiple heals to actually get meaningful use of his monster effect, unless you really are going to normal summon him all the time, which is questionable. Also, recalling the lack of usefulness associated with Heal's Pendulum effect compounds the annoyance factor. So basically, the Pendulum effect should be used when resources are late in the duel, and the monster effect should be used only when Heal is available, as it stands right now. However, right now though, Dandy just seems to be a little too inefficient to be a real high-value card for Abyss Actors. Funky Comedian is kind of the polar opposite to Heal in almost all respects. Its Pendulum effects increases your monster's attack rather than stripping attack from the opponent. Its monster effect has a similar attack increase centering around its own attack, although this increase is rather bad relative to Heal's decrease effect. Also, Comedian does not have a search effect like Heal. However, I run 3 copies of Comedian solely because of its 8 scale standing. Its attack changing effect can be useful from time to time for getting over big monsters, but that's 8 scale without having to rely on Wild Hope, allows for non-Abyss Actor playmaking, which I feel is important for increased success for this deck, for the pure build doesn't have enough tools to win on its own. Right now, between running Dandy when it comes out and Comedian for a high scale, I would run 2 copies of Comedian, 1 copy of Dandy, but since Dandy's not out, as mentioned, 3 copies of Comedian. Extra is a frustrating but necessary evil in this deck because it is important to run for Pendulum setup consistency, but it is basically worthless once the scale is set up, limiting the explosiveness of the deck. As a level 1, it's rather dead in the Extra deck, relying on a card like Dandy or Lady to return it to the hand. 3 copies, though, because of its importance to consistency. While it probably will not be out for a long time in the TCG, Twinkle Star is a nice 1-copy card that combines very nicely with Comedian's monster effect due to the multi-monster attack effect when it is sitting in your Pendulum zone. That scale 9 is also definitely nice as well. However, its monster effect right now, in my opinion, is rather pathetic outside of its combination with Fantasy Magic, and even that's a little reach for me. The spell support starts off with a rather significant bang in Rise of the Dark Ruler, one of the best spell cards in the game. Rise destroys face-up cards on the field equal to the number of different named attack position actors on the field, which allows it to commonly be at least a +1. Most of the time it'll be a +2 or even +3. When Superstar or Heal is on the field, the opponent cannot respond to its activation, so no chaining or negation, allowing it to easily remove those negator monsters. The ability to destroy your own cards can also be useful, opening up a scale for something more useful for the given time. Its secondary effect, representing the general theme, actor spells, the application of a significantly powerful additional effect when it's destroyed by an opponent's card effect while face down, is rather useful, and acts as an effective deterrent, the ability to take 2 actor or script cards from your deck and add them to your hand. Rise is a fantastic cycle card in combination with Superstar that commonly puts the opponent plays in danger of destruction after every turn, and is one important strategy to winning with actors. Finally, Rise also serves as an effective means to remove a face-up anti-spell fragrance, preventing it from dismantling this deck at a much higher probability than it would another Pendulum-based deck. 3 copies of Rise. Opening Ceremony's activation effect is significantly substandard. A single-use maximum 2,500 life point increase is really not worth the deck space in my opinion. However, its set destruction effect is incredible, commonly netting a +3 to +5. Unfortunately, with almost no means to reliably trigger this effect outside of completely relying on your opponent to recklessly hit it, Ceremony is rather pointless to run because, in my opinion, the opponent will either be going for the OTK, which mitigates the value of the drawn cards unless you're playing something like Battle Fader, or will not hit your back row and just play high and slow and eventually just try to wear you down and eat through that back row. Now some might interject, what about Durandal or Anti-Luminescent Knight? The problem with Durandal is that the opponent selects the card to destroy, so Durandal in this deck is only useful when you have no Pendulum scales, otherwise the opponent will simply go after a scale. Also, summoning Durandal in this deck is an inefficient chore due to the lack of level 5 Abyss Actor. One could tie in the artifacts, but that just seems to make this deck a little more clumsy in its operation. And Anti-Luminescent Knight is kind of in power creep since it doesn't stop Twin Twister. Basically, at the moment, Durandal in this deck is just too much work, and Anti-Luminescent Knight almost doesn't do anything, and it's just too much overall. It's just too little reward from a consistency standpoint. I just don't bother running Opening Ceremony. Abode of the Fire Dragon suffers from the same problem as almost all cards with an opponent extra deck dumping effect. The opponent selects the cards that are affected, which heavily limits its usefulness. The set destruction effect removes this problem, but with the ability to only remove one card at a time, Abode is just not worth it by any stretch of the imagination, power or consistency. Fantasy Magic is unfortunately another rather bad script card, for both effects are questionable in their usefulness. The activation effect is okay, for while hand return is not that useful anymore, it does have its moment, but this deck has other means of eliminating annoying anti-destruction monsters. The only real advantage is that it's searchable. The set destruction effect is nice, but not game-breaking, especially because most key opponent monsters are extra deck monsters. Thus, your opponent is not really going to lose their draw phase, so you get a little advantage, but nothing that's earth-shattering, so to speak. Fantasy Magic is pretty much a side deck card. The final script type card that Abyss Actors currently have available is Stage Prop. Stage Prop is rather effective at providing once per turn battle destruction protection for all Abyss Actor monsters, which can make Rookie a complete pain in the butt to get rid of in combination with its own anti-destruction effect. Its single target anti-targeting effect is also nice, especially for Superstar when trying to activate its effect to ward off effect failures and other target monster negation effects. Stage Prop's set destruction effect is also rather nice, bouncing all the opponent's cards back to the hand and can set them back for half a turn or even a full turn. However, the big problem with Stage Prop is that it's not actually a script or Abyss Actor card, thus it's not searchable. While one or two copies can work, its overall usefulness is marginal because you are playing a Pendulum deck, and I choose to use the deck space in another way. If this card were searchable, I would say one copy would be staple, but unfortunately that's not the case. Entering the Abyss Actor Dressing Room is another card that has its moments. It is quite useful to set up your extra deck, providing excellent versatility. However, if not activated early, the card tends to drag the deck down a bit, and can be an atrocious top deck. The biggest problem for Dressing Room is that Abyss Actors do not have a game-breaking card that Dressing Room can search and put into the extra deck ready to be Pendulum summoned. While both Heal, for those who choose to run it, and Superstar are nice to search, they're not so amazing that it takes away from the detriment of this card. Also, because Dressing Room is searchable via Hope, I only choose to run one copy. That takes care of the direct support. What other monsters do I run? Well, with the principal monster structure being Pendulum-based, with the ability to commonly summon between 3 and 7s due to Comedian and another Abyss Actor, I run one copy of Kirin, because it is limited for a reason, and tributing is rather easy in this deck if you can't Pendulum summoning it. I run one copy of Luster Pendulum, the Dracoslayer, for Ignister plays, and to help deck thinning and extra deck setups. Although I will say that while Luster Pendulum has his moments, there are some inefficiencies in this deck due to Wild Hope's effect, so you have to be tactical running him. Also, I like running two copies of Archfiend Eccentric, for destruction versatility, in addition to his 7 scale ability to increase Pendulum summoning effectiveness. I run one copy of Rescue Hamster for its summoning versatility. I run 2 copies of SPYRAL Super Agent due to its information acquisition, innate special summoning, and back row destruction ability. And finally, one copy of Plaguespreader for the additional Synchro ability it provides. For the rest of the spells, I run one Raigeki, and additional draw power in the form of one copy of Upstart Goblin, one copy of Pot of Riches, and one copy of Allure of Darkness. Finally, I run 3 copies of my niche problem solver right now for this format, Book of Eclipse. While I don't run it, an interesting option for this deck is Ties of the Brethren, for it works very well with Rookie, Hope, and Lady. The inability to special summon after activating is not overly relevant, nor is the attack restriction, because Rookie provides field presence, Hope provides searching, and Lady searches for scripts and attack reduction. For the traps, I run 3 copies of Drowning Mirror Force because the opponent will always be a little weary of hitting your back row due to the set destruction effects associated with script cards, because technically they're never going to actually know what script cards you're running, whether it's Game 1, Game 2, or Game 3. My extra deck is as followed. 1 Dinoster Powerful, the strong Dracoslayer, 1 Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, 1 Ignister Prominence, the blasting Dracoslayer, 1 PSY-Framelord Omega, 1 Stardust Charge Warrior, 1 Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon, 1 number S39 Utopia the Lightning, his always relevant partner in crime, number 39 Utopia, 1 Majespecter Paladin the Ascending Dracoslayer, 1 Gaga Samurai, 1 Dark Rebellion X Z Dragon, 1 number 66 Master Key Beetle, 1 number 103 Ragna Zero, 1 Castel, and 1 Abyss Dweller. Overall, Abyss Actors is a solid deck that has little flash, but can be molded into a machine that can compete against the meta due to its excellent grind game and the ability to put large chunks of damage on the board thanks to Rise of the Dark ruled field clearances. Unfortunately for Abyss Actors, Rise is such a high quality card. I believe that card designers missed an opportunity with the other existing script cards, for there is no inherent value from the non-opponent destruction face-down effects from the others. When you just straight activate them, the benefits are very marginal. However, despite that missed opportunity, Abyss Actors are an interesting deck that deserves more people at least giving it a try. Well, that's my Abyss Actor deck. Thank you for your attention and your time. I'm out.